the things that open government involves, and we're not a government, is public input. And there's a little piece at the end of this document, a public document, input, comments and questions. And why don't we see if there are any comments from those of you who've heard any part of this discussion tonight. This is there are a lot of the folks in here who are, I know, very, very shy of speaking out. Marty?
Microphone. Thank you. Teaneck has had its own, as many towns have, interaction with Oprah and the Open Public Meetings Act. And there's one situation which I handled 2 years ago, in which Judge Doyne never had the opportunity to get reversed or challenged by anyone because of what happened. When I had been on the Teaneck Township Council in the 70s, so long ago that nobody, even Chuck, remembers it, we had no issues that I can recall about this. It was pre-Sunshine Law. And when I was the Teaneck Township Attorney in the 80s and 90s, I don't recall really having any problems of anybody asking for documents, because the policy we had then was if somebody asked for a document, you would give it to them. Whether it cost money to print it or not, those were just minor decisions, and we always tried to comply with whatever the law was or should be. But about 2 years ago, as a private attorney, I was asked by two individuals, one who is in the room, Alex Sohn, to start a lawsuit against Teaneck and the members of Teaneck Council based on Oprah. And what had happened, just briefly, was that these two individuals had been asking for records about the Teaneck budget. I can't think of anything more important for the public to know, and how their own governing body was spending their money. And they were having no success in getting the records. They filed the proper Oprah documents, and they got some paper, lots of paper. Some of it was duplicative, some of it was blank pages, a lot of it was meaningless. The issue really boiled down to emails. And this is pre-Hillary and pre-Benghazi, but these were emails on council members' private email services. And most of the then council members refused to comply. And we brought a case, and the order to show cause was signed by Judge Doyne. And in my discussions with the then and still Teaneck Township Attorney, I said, you know that there are several Doyne decisions, very recent, that really helped me. And I sent them to him. And I spoke to him later, and he said, I sent those to each member of the council and explained to them that they should really read them carefully. And the result was the case was settled, we got the documents, and Judge Doyne never had to worry about a reversal. And I think in this case, he probably would have ruled correctly. But lots of towns at that time, and I also talked with Jennifer Borg about some of her cases, and she gave me some help. Lots of towns then and now are having Oprah problems every day because members of governing bodies just think it's their duty to keep the information secret, and that's wrong.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And it's nice to see you, Mr. Mayor. There are no appellate division decisions that I'm aware of on council persons' utilization of private emails.
There is one.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Because I have found repeatedly that you cannot avoid the Oprah mandate by using your private email server, having nothing to do with Secretary Clinton.
One case.
Oh, okay. Was I affirmed? Is that what it was? I don't remember.
It was your case?
I
Marty, was it his case?
I'm sorry?
Was it his case?
No.
No.
I didn't think so. Okay.
To me,
I think
to me, it's
Burlington County or someplace.
to me, it's no. I think it's clear. And again, I'm not speaking about the secretary. That's a case with which I am not familiar. But you cannot have members of government purposely try to avoid the mandate of the law by using their private emailing server and say, therefore, we're not required. So I have written several cases, and I'm hopeful that the issue gets resolved.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Annie Hausman, and I was the plaintiff in Hausman versus the Northern Valley Regional. Oh, that's okay. You don't mind. You can hear me? The Northern Valley Regional Board of Education, as a result of a mandatory student random drug testing program they wanted to institute, and I filed many over requests with a group of parents, and you ruled on our case. There were private emails involved, and I'm a lay person. I'm a mom. I'm very involved. I've met Senator Weinberg. I'm very involved with the Women's Center in Englewood. And I just wanted to thank you. I read about this going on here tonight, and I really was grateful that we ultimately slowed down the process, and the policy was never, it did not pass, and every Board of Ed member that was up for election this past November did not get reelected. And I want to say it was a direct result of a group of parents who were very passionate about the nature of which this policy was being pushed through, and the personal emails that we found through our first overproduction, which is how we came to be in front of you. So I just wanted to come and thank you for your attention and time you took in deliberating your decision, because it made all the difference. So thank you.
Paul.
So a couple of weeks before Loretta Weinberg was in your courtroom, I was in your courtroom too. I filed an over complaint, and it's touching hearing how you feel about how the appellate division reversed you. It's how I felt when you ruled against me. quite the same kind of feeling. But as the press,
Let's see, how are we tonight? 3-2. What is it?
As the press, I'm not the record, and I'm not a state senator, so I wasn't represented by counsel. I was there by myself. And just to point out to people, when you make a request and it's denied, you have two options. You can complain to the GRC, which I had actually done. And I happened to be in Trenton one day, and I walked into their office to find empty cubicles, just like you described there. And the two people who were working in the office were very aware of my case, and they told me in about a year they would get to it. So I wound up filing in your courtroom. And you told me you basically had to deny me because you couldn't have both things going on. You couldn't complain to the GRC and also bring it to court. So in a very quick hearing, we agreed to, sort of end the case. And about 30 minutes later, you issued a 4-page opinion on all of the arguments that the Housing Authority of Bergen County had made, not in response to my Oprah, made in response to my lawsuit, completely, different arguments they made in response. And it's funny, last week it actually hit the GRC and became part of a decision. It's now part of the record, your opinion. And there was things we never got a chance to discuss. In fact, the Housing Authority never sent me a copy of their response. I got it from your clerk the day before we went to your courtroom with an understanding of, I was gonna lose anyway, so why should we bother? But your opinion, there's one thing that really troubled me, and I almost wanted to spend another $280 and get back in front of you just to ask the question. But I decided to let it go. It's funny, you ruled that my request, the Housing Authority said that my request would have resulted in thousands and thousands of emails, so my request was too broad. So the question is, how does somebody making an Oprah know that the request is too broad? I wound up actually making smaller requests.
You got to ask that question without spending.
Yeah, no, that's why I was delighted tonight, and I blew off the freeholder meeting to be here, so I could ask this question. And
Actually, he told me, when I saw him yesterday, he was gonna blow it off.
We spoke about it yesterday too, so it's, you know, I didn't have to get back before you, but.
I do remember seeing you, sir, but I must admit, senility is ravaging. I don't recall the case.
I argued a lot about the cost and wondered why I had to pay the full filing fee to get before you. When,
Well, I don't control filing
of course,
fees.
but that might jog your memory, actually, maybe.
I haven't, I do remember it was Houseman's case. But in direct response to your inquiry, I think your likelihood of getting the material is increased if you narrow the request.
Okay.
The more specific you can be, and the narrower you can be as to what you are truly seeking, the greater the likelihood. If you say, I want all emails for 10 years that use the word government, then the likelihood is the court's going to find that overly broad.
Yeah.
Candidly, sir, if I did recall it, I would tell
Right,
you,
sure. My point
honestly.
being, when you say you're more likely in the court, or now, I tend to make Oprah requests. A week doesn't go by where I don't make one. Normally in a week, I make 7, 10, 15 Oprah requests, and about a third of them never get responded to. Forget about being denied, they're not even responded to. And my recourse is the GRC for $280 and come to court. So maybe actually this one is also for Senator Weinberg. How do you make these people respond?
How do you get the GRC moving?
No, you get the GRC moving because a lot of municipalities, certainly a lot of police forces, will just not respond to Oprah requests. They throw them in the garbage. They don't feel that they have any obligation to respond. So I don't know if some of these people in the audience want to make Oprah requests, but it's an uphill battle just to get a response. And there's no recourse, really. My one time in court, I probably wouldn't go back again. If I'm not responded to, I'll just have to let it slide because I'm not the record. And I do appreciate what they do as far as furthering the court's cause for over.
See, we don't have we haven't chosen an office, an audience that's necessarily going to be, well, you heard the senator, three cases. Jim?
I actually wasn't going to answer that, but I have a different question. I have a different question, which is a little more difficult, because I have to be able to phrase this. Can we write something in the law, or is there a way to do it when a public body purposely, or maybe not purposely, just because they're not good at what they do, I'm going to use, with all due respect to the council members in this audience, I'm going to use Teaneck as an example. Teaneck moved from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. The pros and cons of that can be battled out in another place. But they didn't do it by passing an ordinance, and they didn't do it by passing a resolution, which of course would have caused public input. They did it by putting into the personnel policies, the manager has the right to set the work week. So nobody knew when they went from the 5 to 4-day work week until they showed up here on Fridays and found the municipal building closed. So my question becomes, how do we address that? To me, that was a under the radar screen way of passing a very important public policy and doing it in such a way that the public was not informed until they found out about it by accident after the fact. Is there some way that the law could or should address that kind of issue? And I see Matt looking pensive. I don't know if you have an answer to that, or if it even comes under this, or if it just comes under politics and elections.
Yeah, it's it's difficult, this goes back to the old saying that it's difficult to legislate away every single problem. It reminds me of the situation that the senator describes. It reminds me of the situation you frequently see at state authorities throughout the state, where workers are given very substantial raises, but the authority never actually votes on the raises, they just vote on a budget. And so they contend that they're being transparent because here's our budget for the next year. And let's say the budget increases 2% from one year to the next. There's no action by the public body that specifically governs raises, but you look back and there's a group of employees that even get 10% raises. So I think those two situations are similar, and it seems to me that the judge has additional or other views on it, but you would have to specify in the law, these are the sorts of things that must explicitly go before the governing body. And I think as a legal matter that would work, but I also suspect that as a legislator, when you sat down to actually list those things, it could be a very dicey endeavor, because there'd be a lot to list, and if you didn't capture everything, then people would start arguing, well, Senator Weinberg in her bill didn't say I had to put this before the council, and so we're not going to put it before the council.
Agendas are agendas, right?
So that's a dicey one. While I have the microphone in my hand, if I could say one other quick thing in response to the question that was raised before about how to ensure an Oprah request is appropriately narrow. One quick thought on that. What a lot of people would say, and I think a lot of judges believe, is that the design of the Oprah law is to secure identifiable documents. And so, as the judge started to say before, the idea is not, behind the law, is not to endorse a fishing expedition. And so I think your best chance of getting an Oprah, in my experience, in getting an Oprah request responded to and responded to appropriately is to specify the exact document you're looking for, as opposed to saying, I want everything that pertains to this, or everything that has, tell me the document you're looking for. If you're able to do that, that's going to be your best chance.
And the problem of the public trying to understand whether or not those documents actually exist sits there as that question that sits between those two things. Jim, you were next up, then Henry.
Just a very quick question. The judge made a suggestion to Senator Weinberg, why don't you change the law to deal with agenda? And you talked about, Senator Weinberg, how difficult it is to push these amendments. If you went back into the legislature next week and you said, I have a bill, I want to amend the definition of business, what kind of pushback are you getting? Is it just inertia, or?
I've spent the last 2 years doing that.
But how could you describe what people say to you?
It is not, in my biased but humble opinion, it has nothing to do with reality. The League of Municipalities, the league that represents Teaneck and the other 561 municipalities, was the worst partner in this endeavor. The worst. And we still have in our caucus, by the way, some mayors, who were grandfathered in before we did away with dual office holding. So we've got mayors who have their own bias against this. And so you mentioned, and I explained this to Linda a little earlier, we talked about this, which is why I'm amazed that Byron was able to get this passed the first time. Different legislature, different issues, I guess, but you mention the word Oprah or OPMA, and they get apoplectic. They hate the law, they hate everything about it, And their attitude is they don't want the public messing up their sense of efficiency, whether it is public input. And look, I'd be the first to say the public can be annoying. Some of you in this audience have been annoying. Not only to the Teaneck Council, but in my office too. But that's the nature of the business we're in. And the attitude of public officials that still gets, I wish I could get over my passionate feeling about this, but the attitude of public officials, particularly local public officials, is they don't want this. They will do anything in their power to not change it because they're always worried that something's going to be worse, even though there are a lot of things in this new bill that would help municipalities. We wrote into it, for instance, there are the data miners, as we call them. Petco comes in and asks for all your dog licenses so they can market their products. Well, that's not what Oprah, and I think Matt addressed that. That's not what this law was intended to do, or, all due respect, lawyers who want all your driver's license problems, whatever. So we wrote into it when somebody wants a big chunk, like the Petco, the town can charge appropriately. So we gave a lot of things to the municipalities that I thought would make life better for them, but I have not been able to get 21 votes in my own caucus for the new bill. And I went through 2 years, pushed it right up to committee. Press Association has been a great partner. The ACLU has been a great partner. Foundation for Open Government has been a great partner. Bergen Grassroots, whole variety of organizations. The League of Municipalities was among the worst. And I will continue saying that until such time as we get this moved, and I'm hoping in the new session that that will happen. So just, I certainly made a note because if we're going to do any big changes, and we should, because if all municipalities would just put everything online, they wouldn't have to deal with this. Just put it all online. And we even allowed in this bill for the state to set up a web page in case small municipalities don't have access. They can set up their own link on a state web page. So we wrote a lot in to be helpful, and it's going to take a lot more grassroots support to move this. But as I said, I thought the Press Association has been great. There was a lot of issues, and I'll bring up one other issue and let the audience get back involved, but it's the issue of subcommittees. More and more municipalities are doing their work by subcommittee, which are then not subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, because they're less than the majority. And this was particularly important to the Press Association, that subcommittees should be at least minutes kept, because let's say we're talking about a development, and the subcommittee goes out and interviews the developers and whatever, and then comes back to the council and says, okay, we want to build A on this lot. Well, the public has no idea of what went into that decision. That caused such consternation that we finally backed off the subcommittee idea and just said, a subcommittee only has to report to the council some once or twice a year and have put in some minutes. So those are the kinds of issues, but it's official.
Henry?
Hi, Judge Doyne. I'm very glad that you was bothered by the people on the side of the road and the turnpike, as I was. And And I'm also glad that you gave us the story about the potential carjacking when the police wouldn't give the information. But you mentioned Ferguson and Staten Island and Chicago, and the open public meetings parts of those kinds of issues rise to a different level than what we're talking about here. And I think that this is a much more serious concern for the nation, because all over the place there are problems like that and people can't get the information. I'd like to hear something from you about that.
I think, sir, that's probably more directed to Senator Weinberg. As judges, it's our responsibility to handle cases that are presented to us and to try to comply with the law. Priorities are left to our elected officials, and legislation is left to our public officials. My personal feelings really are of no moment. The senator's personal feelings are a far greater moment, but for what we as judges do, that is decide what records have to be released, I think we're entitled to consider the public interest. And one of the exceptions that I mentioned tonight is whether it's inimical to the public interest. To me, that is generally not the hardest question. And candidly, that's why I think, at least in Bergen County, I wonder whether I've sort of had a therapeutic effect, because I don't think we get as many applications as others, because I tried to write decisions. There was no surprise with me. And I think everyone knew that as far as I'm concerned, I wanted and I expected public officials to comply with the law. The rest I'll leave to the good senator as to priorities, because I'm just a former judge.
It's 9:15, folks. We actually literally have to be out of here by 9:30, and those of us who have to clean up this need those 15 minutes. This has been a really interesting evening. I think we heard some things that are really important. I think that a broader group than is here tonight should have heard it. I'm really glad that you were here to hear it. The issues that Dr. Pruitt just raised, I think, interplay with what it is that we were talking about tonight, and getting all of that right in a society that's having such trouble knowing that Black Lives Matter is we're not going to solve them all with transparency, but certain aspects of them, I think we heard pointing toward a kind of resolution tonight. George, you want to say one thing?
Yes, just one quick question for Judge Doyne. Based on a comment of one of my Ramsey fellows, I wanted to ask, is there a method or an approach through the court to try and resolve Oprah issues or other issues without filing a formal suit?
There is no formalized proceeding or procedure if, though, the municipality is willing, and if the requester is willing, you could always try to ask a retired judge to consider the matter, and he or she could give you his or her informed decision as to what might be likely to occur. That would be much more expeditious, and it may be cheaper, but there's no official program that I'm aware of how you can be heard before a complaint is filed.
I had gotten the impression that there was a semi-formal approach. Perhaps it cost a nominal amount, but not the full filing fee. But Anyway, I'll try and
Well,
find
you
out.
know there is the records council, right? You-
Right, and the-
Oh, no, no, no.
The GRC is for
This
free.
would be, this would be here in Hackensack at the court. Okay.
There- Not that I know of.
Where, are we,
Chuck, can I make one comment?
40 seconds, 40 seconds.
Quickly,
I got the watch on.
going back to former Teaneck Councilwoman Loretta Weinberg's comment about the manager of Teaneck switching the town from a 5-day to a 4-day weekend by some act. I don't think you need to change at all in the law. What the manager was doing, the manager's job under Teaneck's form of government is just to carry out the policies set by the council. He has a ministerial job. The act of changing the township and how it affects all of its citizens from 5 days to 4 days is a matter of policy. That can only be done by a council action, which puts it under the Open Public Records Act and Open Public Meetings Act. I don't think you need to change there. You just need to look at it differently.
I actually think we've got to call it off, folks. It's time. If we may not be able to persuade the folks up here to spend 2 more minutes with you, and do come on up. And thank you again for being here.